Well, this lady happened to be the wife of a British intelligence officer, and once the KGB saw him pass nearby her 3 or 4 times over the course of a month or two, again, raised suspicion. So Penkovsky had no way to get his information to us except those 2 fairly primitive ways. The third problem with Penkovsky was that our officers had no way of knowing if KGB surveillance was on us when we attempted to meet Penkovsky or when we went to retrieve one of his dead drops. So those are 3 major technical problems that he had. The first one we solved this would have been 1971. We developed a camera that we called a sub-miniature camera that Penkovsky could use, or that agents could use to photograph documents. The first agent we gave this to was an agent named Trigon, Alexander Orodnikov, and he was in Bogota in 1973, and we gave him this camera, this sub-miniature camera. This camera was capable of photographing 100 sheets of paper, and it was camouflaged, or it was concealed in a fountain pen that he carried, that Trigon carried. So Trigon, being a Soviet diplomat, was used to fine things in life, and he could carry an expensive fountain pen like this. A fountain pen worked just fine. This particular model is, because I'm always staining my shirts, is a ballpoint rather than a fountain pen, but this writes real letters. A real pen, so Trigon used this pen to do his normal writing, but then when he had an opportunity to photograph secret documents, he could unscrew the other end of the film, and you will see there's the lens in this, and the camera, buried in this part of the pen. Now, this is what was particularly cool about it. With that motion, Trigon was able to photograph. Yeah, this lens was set for an 11-inch focal length, and this motion would both expose one frame and advance film one frame. So that was a major breakthrough.
Did he get a hold of you?
In our ability to do clandestine photography. And this is the size of the components of that little camera. These are the components so against the dime. So you get a little sense of the size of them.
And she said their cupboards are bare.
There's an opportunity for us.
Yeah.
The other device that we developed as a result of the Penkovsky case was known as a surveillance receiver. This was, again, a cigarette pack size unit that could be concealed under one's arm, under a case officer's arm, and you see in the middle a little receiver that went in the ear with the loop antenna that was disguised as a necklace. We were able, with this device, to intercept the communications of the KGB surveillance teams that were following us around, and by knowing if they were with us, we would not have clandestine meetings. If we were free from surveillance, we didn't hear them on the air. We knew we were free from surveillance, and we could, in fact, have the meetings. This was how we handled Trigon. Trigon was the first agent since Penkovsky that we handled effectively in the Soviet Union. These pieces of equipment, combined with the first digital transmitter, I call it the first SMS system, text messaging system that I believe was ever developed, called Buster. CIA, the Office of Technical Service, developed this for our agents, and they could input one character at a time, maybe as many as 260 characters or so, a message, and then transmit that over the air up to a distance of about 1/4 of a mile. to another receiving unit. At that point, we didn't have to actually meet our agents to get information from them. A huge technical breakthrough for us. So by 1978, 1979, we were running several dozen agents inside Moscow because of these three critical technologies that had been developed by the CIA. Now, I'd like to say that, that's the end of the story. Regrettably, it was not, because in 1995, a CIA trader by the name of Aldrich Ames, CIA officer, provided the Soviets with the names of about a dozen of our key agents, and all of those were arrested and either executed or imprisoned for the rest of their life. So technology can solve a problem. Technology can give you an opportunity to conduct clandestine operations, but the spy, him or herself, always remains a vulnerability. The spy against you remains a vulnerability to all of your hard-won victories. Now, just to wrap up, on Sunday was the 20th anniversary of the bombing of Pan Am 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. About 270 lives were lost in there. Why that plane went down was a major mystery, and for several months, all kinds of evidence was attempted to be put together, and nobody could quite figure it out. One piece of evidence that was found was a fragment on that finger that on the screen, that size of a fragment. That was a piece of the timer on the bomb on Pan Am 103. And one of the OTS officers, and we tell this story in Spycraft, one of the OTS officers for years had followed the development of improvised explosive devices being used by terrorists around the world. When that was brought to him by the FBI, said, I think I've seen that particular color and that particular composition before. And he went back and looked at his records and materials that we had collected over the previous 20 years, and in fact was able to identify that fragment as part of a type of timer that had been used in a number of other incidents perpetrated by the Libyan intelligence service. So with that information, 12 years after the bombing in the year 2000, Libyan terrorist was in fact convicted of the bombing of 103, and that started the movement that's lasted now for about 8 years of Libya increasingly getting out of the terrorism business, getting out of the nuclear business, giving the American government some real leverage against the Libyans, all because of what one of those OTS officers did. So I thought that was an interesting personal story that and very, very contemporary for today's audience. Finally, one other story in the book. Here are three heroes of OTS. This is the story of how espionage is not safe. These three guys were caught in Cuba trying to put a bug in the Chinese embassy. Caught by the Cubans, sentenced to 3 years in jail, and so they spent 3 of their very young years, I think they were all in their 30s at the time, 3 of their young years in a Cuban jail, and I always want to credit them and salute them in one of these presentations for the courage that they exhibited, and the story is told in detail in Spycraft. We started this book with 3 objectives in mind. One was to honor the spy text, honor the text like Andy and Dave and Wally. We wanted, secondly, to fill a gap in Cold War history. No one had written about this particular part of Cold War history before. And third, we wanted to communicate to a broader public that the legacy of the CIA is really one of commitment, it's one of innovation, it's one of achievement, and that's a story we hope we've told in Spycraft. So I thank you very much for your attention. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be happy to take it.